It is March. It is March 21st, 2022. My name is Ango, and today we are live on the Ango Show. Hopefully everybody here is having a good day, a good night. Hopefully my audio sounds crispy. Hopefully the camera and everything is working. I hope everything's working out. What's up, Boom Squiggles? Justin Richardson, Jason Rondon, Ernie, Will, Armin26, Cisco Kid, Adam78. Shout out to all of you joining in the chat. We'll wait for a little bit until people get in. Hopefully everybody is having a good night. We're going to talk about WWE Raw. Yeah, definitely going to talk about Raw. And actually, surprisingly, I enjoyed WWE Raw tonight. Wow, it is pretty damn interesting. I can't believe I'm actually enjoying WWE Raw. But as of late, WWE Raw has actually been pretty damn good. Adam Page says WWE never announced Cody Rhodes to show up tonight. Yes, I know this. Guys. If you follow me on Twitter at the official Ango, I knew that Cody Rhodes was not going to be here tonight. It's not a big deal. Cedric Gilmer, welcome. Mike, welcome. Tim Glover, welcome. Brainstorm Challenges, howdy. Steven, what's up? What's up, everybody? Yes, this was awesome, man. I'm glad to be here talking wrestling with you guys. Obviously, we have a pretty eventful week. The next few weeks are actually going to be pretty crazy. So if you guys follow the channel, I'm doing this live show for Raw, NXT, AEW. Thursday, we're going to do something pretty interesting. And then, of course, Friday, Rampage and SmackDown. So we're doing these live review shows. And we'll have a lot of fun with them. And then, of course, we have WrestleMania weekend coming up in a few weeks. Next week, Raw, Dynamite. I mean, literally so much stuff is happening in pro wrestling. I'm super excited about it. Elizabeth, welcome. Mario Ramirez, welcome. Kenneth, welcome. Ray Segura, welcome. Albert Ponce, welcome, brother. Thank you guys all for stopping by. Yeah, no, this is crazy. I gotta be honest. Like, this is I have quite a few notes. There's a lot of things I want to talk about today, and we'll try to get them all within the hour. Things I like, things I didn't like about Raw, just overall opinions, overall views on WWE's product today. Obviously, you guys know I talk about wrestling quite often, so I'm trying to bring some analysis to these live shows that I find to be interesting and maybe a little bit different from other people who talk about wrestling. Sam Piboon, welcome. Will Cody Rhodes be at Raw next week? Well, you never really know. You never really know in that situation. Honestly, we'll talk about that. Most definitely a lot to talk about tonight. Seth Rollins. Oh, hold on. We got a super chat already. Wow, the show's barely been live for a minute. Zachary just came in clutch with a $1.99 super chat. Keep up the great work. Love the content. Loved Raw. Zachary, you're the man. Thank you so much for your support. I agree. I really loved Raw today. Dude, this is so weird. If you guys watched my channel, and you guys can kind of go back to like the pandemic era, you'll see a ton of inconsistency on my channel. And when you see those inconsistencies on my channel, it's largely due to the fact that honestly, I just really didn't enjoy wrestling during the pandemic. So now I'm kind of in a situation where like, this is my full-time job. I'm watching wrestling on a weekly basis. And I kind of disconnect from social media a little bit too, which definitely helps. I'll send out some tweets here and there. But I don't actually, I don't know. I'm actually enjoying WWE and AEW and Impact. This is probably the best wrestling's been in a while, which is a really cool thing. So, again, thank you for the super chat. $1.99. Zachary, you are the man. If you guys want to submit a super chat, I'll read whatever questions you guys have on those super chats. Go ahead and send them through the chat. Yeah. Let's see. Tony Mashak says Cody's playing all you guys and girls. No, that's not true. Nobody's getting played here. Joshua Williams says, "Hey Ango, I love the channel. It's all the way from Kelowna, BC. I'm not sure where that's actually. Is that British Columbia? Anyways, Joshua, thank you so much for the love. I appreciate it. Noob Lungs in the chat. He's a member. If you guys want to become a member, you can join. $4.99 a month. Your support is definitely appreciated. Noob Lungs says them dragging out Cody showing up is actually being done very well, I think. Guys, I cannot wait to talk about that. Literally, my notes I have in caps lock. Do not effing forget to talk about this. Legit, like there's like something I literally have some stuff written, just because I'm trying to be a little bit more calculated too with my thoughts. Everything you hear from me, guys, is like genuine reaction. It's real stuff. It's real analysis. So definitely gonna talk about that. Let's see. Oh, we got another super chat. Okay, Albert Ponce just super chat $2. Wow. Men's Raw tag team has been really good lately. Yes. So this is something we're also going to talk about in the review. Albert, thank you for your $2 super chat. I definitely appreciate that. And yes, I 1,000,000% agree. I'm not saying WWE's tag team division is on the same level as AEW by any means, but what I will say is that WWE's tag team division on Raw has definitely been a significant improvement, and I think that has a lot to do with RK Bro getting over. But then also, in addition to that, I think you just have really good talent, and I think this is where sometimes the talent, they're taking a okay storyline and making it really freaking cool. So I'm definitely with you, Albert. I definitely agree. And again, thank you so much for your super chat. Let's see. We got some more people in the chat. Long-time listener, keep up the good content from Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. Shout out to you. Thank you. Guys, I definitely want to jump into this. We'll kind of bounce back and forth between my notes and the chat. I still don't know the system and how this is going to work, but here on the Ango show, this show is designed to be community-centric. So I'll go through some of my notes because obviously there's a lot of stuff that I have to get through, but I still want to make sure I'm engaging with you guys in the chat. So don't think I'm ignoring you. If I don't read your message in the chat, I will try my best to get to it. And yeah, it should be really cool. So let's jump into it. All right, let's see. So first things first, I really want to talk about the things that I enjoyed about Raw. So like these things, and then I'll kind of go in depth. But these things specifically are the things that really stood out to me. 1, Kevin Owens. 2, Seth Rollins and AJ Styles. 3, Pat McAfee. 4, Edge. 5, finally we know when Veer is coming. So I will say that's a good thing. And 6, most importantly, the number one thing I really, well, it's not the number one thing, but one of the other things I really liked was Finn Balor. And I'll explain that in a little bit too. So let's take a look. Let's kind of go from the beginning of Raw, right? And I really want to talk about this. Kevin Owens comes out to WWE, to the WWE universe. They're in Chicago, and he comes out with a bald cap, Austin 316 shirt, literally wearing knee braces. This guy looks like Stone Cold Steve Austin. He comes out to the music and everything you can imagine. And at this point in time, Kevin Owens is obviously trolling the WWE universe. By the way, the crowd was a massive pop. Like, he got me, okay? Like, I turned on Raw. The show is opening up with Kevin Owens literally coming out of Stone Cold Steve Austin. Brilliant. This is like MJF coming out with like CM Punk's music, right? This is really beautiful stuff. I love, sometimes you forget how good WWE can be when they mess with the audience. This was one of those things where honestly, I genuinely believe this was fantastic. Shout out to them for pulling this off. Kevin Owens comes out. He's basically parodying Stone Cold Steve Austin, talking as if he's Stone Cold Steve Austin. And the thing that really pops me, the thing that really gets me here is when Kevin Owens actually, guys, he calls for the beer. And for those who don't know, Kevin Owens doesn't actually drink. So instead of opening up the beers and drinking them, he keeps like dropping them. He can't catch them. Then he gets the guy who's throwing the beers to come in the ring to hand him the beer. He hands him the beer, and then he hits him with a stunner. Honestly, this was really freaking cool. I really have to admit here too, Kevin Owens, you know, I kind of felt for the guy at first when I found out that they weren't going to do a match for him at WrestleMania. This right here is so much bigger and better than a match at WrestleMania. And I really don't know, honestly, I really don't know what WWE's plan here is. The rumor that's floating around is they'll brawl around for a little bit. It's potentially main eventing night 1. But they're not going to be having a match. Guys, I honestly say this with all my heart, all honesty. I don't know if Kevin Owens versus Stone Cold will ever be a match in WWE. But if somehow, some way WWE can put Stone Cold against Kevin Owens in a meaningful feud, I think it would be a fantastic show. I got to be completely honest with you. I think WWE, we're starting to see that they're getting better and better with their storytelling. This right here, it pops me, and I just got to be honest. I really think when you look at, when you think of WWE and what they're doing here with Kevin Owens, they obviously trust him to be in the spotlight, no different than they trust Sami Zayn. So for those, I've seen some people, they try to bury, for whatever reason, I don't know why these YouTubers or podcasters or wrestling personalities, they're trying to bury Kevin Owens as if he's like, as if Kevin Owens is not this like massive like star, right? Like people are trying to bury him like he's not massive. Kevin Owens is massive. He signed for massive money. He was really big deal in the indies. He's obviously a big deal in WWE. They did a fantastic job with Kevin Owens, making him feel important going into this feud with Stone Cold. And I think if they were to put that match together at some point, if it actually happened, I think with long-term storytelling, those two guys can pull it off. Now, I want to bounce back for a second because we did get a super chat, and I don't want to ignore it. But we did get a super chat from Zachary. Thank you again, Zachary, for your super chat. For $1.99, he says it's one of the reasons why he re-signed with WWE. And I think that's 100% right on the money. When it comes to Kevin Owens, he re-signed for millions of dollars. Obviously, that was really significant for Kevin Owens. I don't know if WWE has plans for Kevin Owens being a world champion. There is, right? I'm going to be positive about WWE, but I'm also going to be somewhat negative. If WWE is truly unifying the World Championship and the Universal Championship, I think that's an issue, right? Because as Zachary points out, it's one of the reasons why Kevin Owens re-signed with WWE. He's going to be treated seriously. They're going to put him in big storylines. This is obviously big. But I want to see Kevin Owens as a world champion. And if you got Cody Rhodes and you got all of these different people at the top for the world championship, it puts Kevin Owens in the upper mid-card, which is definitely a good spot. But it is definitely a concern for me as a fan because it's like, okay, I do want him to win a world championship. It's obviously very crowded. It's the same issue that I've said AEW also has. But again, thank you, Zachary, for your super chat. I definitely appreciate it. I do want to move on a little bit to something else, and we'll kind of touch on this throughout the night as well. But I want to talk about Seth Rollins and everything that WWE is doing right. This is absolutely incredible. So first of all, before we get to the ending of Raw, can we just talk about how massively important it is that WWE is putting Seth Rollins in this position? It's the worst kept secret. Cody Rhodes is coming to WWE. Whether he shows up next week or shows up at WrestleMania, Cody Rhodes is showing up to WWE. And this is fantastic news for Cody Rhodes. This is fantastic news for wrestling fans. And this is a huge win for WWE. It honestly is a huge win for WWE. And I genuinely mean this in the most positive thing ever. Like, in the most positive way, when I say this, like, please do not take this as a stab at WWE. But Cody Rhodes coming to WWE is not a big deal if this Seth Rollins storyline doesn't exist. And I mean that respectfully. I truthfully mean that respectfully. It is March 21st, 2022. Seth Rollins, again, hijacking the show. Every opportunity he gets, trying to cut a promo. The mic gets cut off on him. Goes backstage, yells at Adam Pearce, Sonya Deville. And the WWE officials give him a chance to compete against AJ Styles. And if he wins, he can have the match against Edge. It's not really revolutionary storytelling, but it makes the most sense in this situation. Now, of course, we'll talk about the main event later on in the show, but I really want to mention this because think about how important it is for Cody Rhodes. Think about how important it is for Cody Rhodes to come into WWE, and think about how bad it would have been if Cody Rhodes just showed up in WWE 2.5 weeks before WrestleMania. Imagine that. Right now, Seth Rollins hijacking the show, being desperate to get on the show, tells you that there is going to be so much anticipation for Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania, and that anticipation is far more impactful for Cody's return than it is for Cody to show up in some stupid-ass storyline to build a story in 2.5 weeks. I've seen a lot of people try to tell me that Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins should have a proper build. They should have a proper build. They shouldn't do anything like John Cena and Undertaker at WrestleMania 34. Now, I will tell you, at WrestleMania 34, when I was there and we got John Cena versus Undertaker, that was a big deal for me personally because as a wrestling fan, I never got to see Undertaker live. It was actually one of the weirdest things. Out of all the wrestling shows I've been to, I never seen Undertaker live. So now we get to a point where WWE can either have Cody Rhodes show up at WrestleMania, which, by the way, 60, 70, 80,000 people all going absolutely crazy for Seth Rollins because he's going to hijack the show, right? You have this opportunity where Seth Rollins, I think you could even build more anticipation on night one. That's really important thing to mention too. On night one, Seth Rollins should hijack the show until he gets a match. And it turns out he still doesn't have a match. Security has to escort him out, right? You got to have some sort of segment to get people amplified about Cody. That is why this is far more impactful. Cody Rhodes is showing up to WWE, and when he shows up to WWE, it will be a far bigger deal because Seth Rollins is going crazy for a WrestleMania match, and he's not going to be able to get it. This guy's gimmick, his character, is literally like he's off the walls crazy for a WrestleMania match, which, by the way, now let's talk about character development here. Seth Rollins gets his match against Cody Rhodes. He can easily lose this match, and now there is logic being applied as to why Seth Rollins lost. He didn't know his opponent ahead of time. He's been going off the wall crazy. He's literally losing his mind. He's not mentally fit for this. He's not prepared. Now he can even go after WWE management for like a conspiracy to like ruin his career. Cody Rhodes versus Seth Rollins now feels like a way bigger deal than it ever would have been. And I genuinely believe had WWE not done it this way, I don't think that would have been successful. I don't think WWE would be successful with a build within 2.5 weeks. I love Cody Rhodes. I've been a very big fan of Cody Rhodes, and I genuinely mean this. I'm watching WWE Raw, and as I watch WWE Raw, I'm telling you right now, as I'm watching this show, I see Seth Rollins keep coming out. He's getting involved in matches. We got the Mysterios in the ring, and Seth Rollins comes out and interrupts. This guy has lost his damn mind. So again, this is why it's so important for WWE to continue developing characters. Without this character development of Seth Rollins, the Cody Rhodes return does not matter. Seth Rollins losing his mind, going crazy, interrupting the show. He's so desperate for this WrestleMania moment, and he still can't get this WrestleMania moment. He can't have his match. He can't have his moment. This is Seth Rollins. He's losing his mind. Oh, and then, by the way, because it's the worst kept secret, we know Cody's going to be at Mania. Just imagine Seth Rollins goes to hijack the show, and next thing you know, the lights go out. And just remember, as the lights go out, the music hits. All of this stuff has a huge payoff. This is why storytelling is so important. If you ask me why I've been enjoying WWE lately, it's the basics. It is absolutely the basics, and that is what intrigues me the most as I watch the show on a weekly basis. And I can't even believe that I'm saying this, because if you asked me 2 months ago or 3 months ago, I would tell you I very well disagree. There's going to be a lot of people trying to say that Cody Rhodes isn't showing up. There's a lot of people who think that. That's fine. I think you're going to enjoy when he does. I really do. I really do. And by the way, WWE knows that you know that Cody is showing up, so they can just give it to you for no reason, or they can give it to you and kind of earn it, right? Keep watching the show to see if it happens. And when it happens, get excited because it does happen. Remember, CM Punk showed up at Rampage. They didn't tell you that CM Punk was showing up. Why was it so effective? You knew he was going to be there, and you were just waiting to take the moment in. That was the same thing with the Hardys when they showed up at WrestleMania, and that will be the same thing with Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania as well. It's going to be a very big moment, and I promise you, we're going to talk a little bit more about this later on in the show, because we have Seth Rollins versus AJ Styles, and again, I can't believe I'm actually freaking saying this, but WWE happens to have this completely booked 100% the correct way, and we're going to talk about it. I don't want to look over this either. Zachary did leave a super chat for $1.99. He says it can be a face turn for Seth and Cody's a heel. Well, I don't know if I'm WWE, I don't know if I put Cody Rhodes in a situation where he comes in as a heel. I do think Cody Rhodes at some point could very well be a heel, but Cody Rhodes right now needs to be a babyface, especially when you look at WWE Raw. I feel like they are lacking on the baby faces. Everybody is pretty much a heel. You have AJ Styles as a babyface, but Edge, Seth Rollins are all heels. There's belief that maybe Riddle or Orton will turn heel. WWE might be teasing a Street Profits heel turn. There is a lot of heels on WWE Raw. I do think they need to be heavy on the baby faces. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but I'm thinking as far as storytelling goes, if you have Seth Rollins lose this match at Mania, Cody Rhodes comes in not only as a big baby face, but Seth Rollins could then continue to freak out and be upset with WWE. And then it kind of prolongs his character where he's just this prick. He's losing his mind. Him losing his mind, it's 100% logical booking, and I honestly give them props for this. Thank you again, Zachary, for your super chat. I do greatly appreciate that. So I do want to switch to another thing. So, again, there were some things that we didn't like, and we'll talk about those things later. But I want to talk a little bit about Pat McAfee. So again, this is all about logic and booking and storytelling. Pat McAfee, the SmackDown commentator, comes in as a special guest commentator for Austin Theory versus Finn Balor, which, by the way, I just want to point out, Finn Balor winning, it's literally perfect, right? Finn Balor winning, it's important. We don't know exactly what's happening for him at WrestleMania. We kind of have some ideas. It doesn't make sense for your mid-card champion to lose on television. This is something I've been complaining about. If you watch the Ango show live on YouTube, you would know that I've spoken about this before. I said AEW, WWE, Impact, I don't give a shit what show it is. If your champions are losing on TV, then take the belt away from them, because that belt means absolutely nothing. And I stand by that. Finn Balor gets the win, but WWE doesn't want to make Austin Theory look bad, so the way that they do this is they have Pat McAfee come in and basically cost him the match. Beautiful. Pat McAfee is looking like he is having the time of his life. This guy, you can tell he just has this freedom to be himself. If you watch the Pat McAfee show, you can see that what you're seeing on TV is the real Pat McAfee. Now, I know a lot of people criticize Vince McMahon, and I understand that a lot of people think that Vince McMahon hinders people's success. And I think in some capacities and in certain ways, certain wrestlers have been booked the wrong way. I will not defend WWE on that stance. I think at times WWE can book people incorrectly, but WWE has it all right with Pat McAfee. In fact, Pat McAfee can lose the match because he's a commentator at the end of the day. Pat McAfee could win the match. If Pat McAfee wins the match, well, what about Vince McMahon? Where's Vince McMahon in all of this? We see Austin Theory getting involved, but what's Vince McMahon's plan? Just a couple of weeks ago, Meltzer was saying something about Vince McMahon will be involved in this match. Okay, well, what if Vince McMahon is the reason why Austin Theory wins? What if Vince McMahon is the reason Austin Theory loses? You literally cannot make the wrong booking decision here. Everything could be logical. Literally, Vince McMahon could come in, low blow Pat McAfee, completely go heel character. I mean, there is literally a lot of things that they can do here. And truth be told, I think this is where WWE has me really hooked in, right? We talk about Seth Rollins, we talk about Kevin Owens tonight, but now they have Pat McAfee getting involved. It allows Finn Balor to win, which is great because he's the champion. And then it also sets up a great situation for Austin Theory because he loses, but whatever happens with him at WrestleMania, not only does he get his big moment, but he's in a big singles feud. Which, by the way, if you don't know, Pat McAfee is a former kicker for the Indianapolis Colts. Former NFL star. So, just to give you an idea, you have Pat McAfee in a singles match. Austin Theory clearly getting a push from WWE. I don't think WWE has done anything wrong in the booking of Austin Theory. I think WWE's in a situation where right now, truth be told, I think it's a win-win situation. I genuinely do believe that. And I love that. I love that WWE has me hooked. I'm not saying they're perfect. But what I'm saying is there's far more stories on television on Monday nights where WWE is just reeling me in. They're getting me to watch and be invested. And it's simple, basic storytelling. These are not stories that are being told that are incredibly advanced. It's not some crazy high-end thing that you have to figure out, some cryptic shit. It's very simple. This person doesn't like this person. This is why. This person is one of the best wrestlers in WWE, but he can't seem to get a match at WrestleMania while everybody else can. By the way, his character this entire time has a huge ego. I don't know if people don't see the connection, right? If you don't see the connection, let me give you a connection, right? Seth Rollins has this massive ego. For the past 2 years, he's transformed from the Monday Night Messiah to pretty much the Monday Night Prick. Seth Rollins continues to show up every week in the most crazy suits. He dresses, acts, and looks like a loser. But he's a great wrestler. And he's cringe. He's incredibly cringe. And as he continues to be cringe, what actually ends up being the case here is that his ego has gotten the best of him. Because now he can't get on the WrestleMania card. And if he can't get on the WrestleMania card, imagine what that does to him. So it goes back to what I've said earlier about Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins. Because there's storytelling here with Seth Rollins losing his mind, going crazy, imagine WWE just brings in finally an opponent worthy of Seth Rollins, which, by the way, is Cody Rhodes. He shows up at Mania, gets the massive pop, gets presented as a big deal, and then you can logically tell the story as to why Seth Rollins lost the match. I pretty much think this is a very massive thing for WWE. And I feel like they've executed it literally perfect. Because, by the way, we get Edge versus AJ Styles, we get AJ Styles versus Seth Rollins. Winner goes on to compete against Edge at WrestleMania. So how does Seth Rollins, this guy with this huge ego, who is fighting for a spot to be at WrestleMania, how can this guy logically lose this match against AJ Styles? Well, Edge comes out and you're trying to push him as this heel. So what does he do? After a amazing match, you have Edge come out and hit AJ Styles with a steel chair. Oh, by the way, that's a disqualification. So AJ Styles wins the match. And then what happens? Seth Rollins now logically does not have a match for WrestleMania. So again, would you rather have a storyline being built in 2.5 weeks? Oh, Cody Rhodes is here and now he's looking to fight Seth Rollins? Or would you rather have a storyline that's been developed because this guy for 2 years has this amazing ego, not good enough to get on WrestleMania, trying to do everything for the show, to get on the show? Oh, and then you bring in Cody Rhodes? I just think it's way more impactful. It makes the anticipation for Cody Rhodes' return much more larger than life. I think people will be ecstatic to see Cody Rhodes. And again, I think it's the worst kept secret. So now WWE is hooking me in on a weekly basis because we know Cody Rhodes is showing up. And we know that deep down inside, there is a path for Seth Rollins to get to WrestleMania. But what is it going to be? Oh, by the way, it doesn't look like it's happening. Why? Because Seth Rollins lost to AJ Styles. He loses to AJ Styles, he starts going crazy. He's beating up the barricade, the steps. He's trashing everything around the ringside. That's how Raw goes off the air. Don't you want to watch next week on Raw to see what happens when Seth Rollins shows up on Raw? By the way, Seth Rollins literally says next week's Raw will not happen unless Seth gets his main event or his Mania moment. So just imagine that. He says Raw won't even happen unless he gets his Mania moment. Is it possible that WWE is now teasing Cody Rhodes for next week? I don't know what Cody's impact is going to be in WWE in terms of viewership or attendance or anything like that. But what I do know is if WWE brings in Cody Rhodes as a big deal, which I think this storyline will help that, I think WWE has a huge win on their hand. WWE has a huge win on their hand, and I think AEW will continue doing what AEW does, but I think Cody going to WWE is going to very well be the thing that might get other AEW people in there. You talk about Jade Cargill and MJF, two potential big names. What about Wardlow? Do you think those individuals would want to go to WWE if Cody Rhodes, the executive EVP, went to WWE and wasn't treated as a big deal? My friends, I think that's how it happens. I think that's how WWE gets Cody Rhodes to be a big deal. He beat Seth Rollins. You could have, honestly, if I was WWE, what I would do, and this is what I would do, me personally. This is my personal opinion. You guys could let me know in the chat if you agree. But if I'm WWE, I actually have Cody Rhodes stay away from Roman Reigns for a little bit. No unification title matches, none of that. No world championship. I would actually have Cody Rhodes win the U.S. championship belt on Raw. We got to get these belts elevated. We got to get these belts to mean something. Damian Priest did a good job as a champion. Finn Balor is doing okay. Give Cody the U.S. championship belt. Cody Rhodes should win the U.S. championship belt as this babyface. He should defend it on a weekly basis. Build his championship to the point where when Cody Rhodes is ready, he can drop the belt to an emerging star. Make this belt the workhorse title. I know the Intercontinental Championship has always been associated with that, but if I am WWE, what I do here is have Cody Rhodes every week defending this belt. Then, because he's constantly winning, because Cody Rhodes is this incredible champion, he's been built up properly, he can go for the world championship. By the way, how can that be impactful? Well, if I'm WWE, let's not ignore real life. Cody Rhodes was not allowed to challenge for the world championship in AEW. I would cut a promo. The last company I worked for, I was an executive vice president. I didn't have the ability to become a world champion, blah, 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 blah. I worked my ass off for that company. I worked my ass off every Wednesday. I'm celebrating ratings, wins, blah, 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 blah. Roman Reigns, I'm coming for you. Just don't ignore real life. Have Cody put out a promo. And he can start by winning that U.S. Championship belt, making it mean something every single week, defending it. I genuinely believe that U.S. Championship belt could be a massive deal for WWE Raw, because now here's the thing that you got to keep in mind. If WWE is truly unifying that World Championship belt, that means you're going to see the World Champion on Fridays and Mondays. Some days the World Champion may not be able to appear on Raw. Let's get that United States Championship belt to a point where it is prestigious. Like to the point where everybody wants to fight for that belt. Multi-man matches. Number one contender matches. Constant defenses. Have that belt defended every single week. Cody Rhodes never won the World Championship in WWE, and guess what? He didn't even win it in AEW. So how am I supposed to get excited about Cody Rhodes? Well, again, it goes back to what I said. Seth Rollins has built this storyline perfectly on his back. Cody Rhodes shows up. He returns to WWE at WrestleMania, the largest reaction you can imagine. And then, by the way, when he does that and then becomes a United States champion, if that were to happen, if he were to become the U.S. champion, it immediately is given some sort of importance right away. Right away. And I think that's why it's so important that everything Seth Rollins is doing, with everything that happened tonight with Edge, everything that happened with AJ, you can feel it. You're watching Raw, you see Seth Rollins literally raging, going crazy because he doesn't have a WrestleMania match. He doesn't have a WrestleMania match. And by the way, if you don't have a WrestleMania match, what are you going to do? You're going to show up to WrestleMania. You're not going to sit in the seats. You're going to cause havoc. And let's just say, for example, he shows up night one. They have to escort him security. Turns out he hijacks night two. They can do a whole storyline. Oh, Seth Rollins trespassing. Take him to jail, whatever. Night two, he escapes. I don't know. Post bail, some shit. He gets out of jail or whatever. You know, obviously this is all kayfabe. And then Seth Rollins comes back to night two. He breaks through the barricade and calls for a match. Adam Pearce comes out and says, you know what? We have a match for you. And then boom. I think this makes the most sense. And I think WWE has done a fantastic job. By the way, WWE has done a fantastic job because, again, I keep talking about basic storytelling. They don't have to have a complex story. You just got to get people hooked. You got to get people to want something. And it's not that I love Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins and these people. I think they're good. But I think they've been dealt a bad hand in terms of creative at certain points. So when I watched Raw tonight, I was like, okay, Seth Rollins has been booked very well recently. AJ Styles and Edge, really awesome storyline. I like the storytelling. I like that Edge is a heel. I like the fact that it's different. And then I'm watching, I'm like, okay, we know Cody's coming, but he's still not here. Where is Cody Rhodes? Where is Cody Rhodes? The hints, the teases. WWE keeps teasing it. They want you to know Cody Rhodes is coming. I'm all for it. I'm all about it. I'm excited about that. I want to know what you guys think about that too. I'm going to be reading the chat and the comments. I'm very, very curious to hear you guys' thoughts. Definitely let me know. I do want to switch things a little bit too to some of the things I didn't like about WWE Raw, because I got to be fair. I got to be honest. So as I talked about the things I liked, I think they're doing a good job with the storytelling with Seth Rollins and Edge and AJ. I think they've dropped the ball a little bit in certain areas. For one, the women's tag team championship belts. It's not for me. They're trying to tease. WWE is trying to tease a split between Zelina and Carmella. Later on, they're best friends again. I get why they're doing it. They're trying to get some of the more women included on WrestleMania. I understand why they're doing it. But the problem is, right, these belts aren't hardly ever defended. You don't actually have legitimate women tag teams. The ones that you did have, you released them. Now they're in Impact. I'll be honest, I think WWE dropped the ball with the women's tag team belts. I didn't care for that. The 24/7 championship stuff, you got Akira Tozawa, incredibly horny for Tamina Snuka. And then you obviously have everything that they are doing with Reggie and Dana Brooke. I mean, look, here's the thing. I am really happy with WWE giving TV time to people that deserve it. Tamina, Dana Brooke, two names that obviously deserve to be on TV. Akira Tozawa obviously deserves to be on TV. I think very highly of those three. Reggie is somebody who I absolutely think is talented, but they're all being used for the 24/7 championship. And I think, truth be told, I think the 24/7 championship, I get why WWE keeps it around. It gets views. People are talking about it. It's always relevant in WWE. But I imagine if Akira Tozawa was presented differently, he can be successful on the main roster. Same thing with Tamina. Same thing with Dana Brooke. It's all about presentation and how they're presented to the audience. So I will give WWE their credit for how they've handled certain people on their roster, how they're handling Austin Theory and his booking, Damian Priest, the Mysterios, Otis, Gable, RK Bro, Matt Riddle, right? Seth Rollins, Owens. I see how some of these people, these names that I'm mentioning, I see how they're presented, and they're clearly presented in a serious way with plans. It's almost like WWE has given them an identity and a vision. When I watch Tamina, Dana Brooke, Reggie, and Akira Tozawa, I get it. It's going to get them 1 million views on YouTube. People will talk about it. It's content. I get it 100%. I don't even hate the 24/7 championship belt, but I hate that it's not taken serious. I hate that it's a comedy belt. I hate that when you look at the championship belt, one day it's going to be retired and you're going to see that R-Truth had 1 million title reigns. I look at what WWE has with the talent. They got to get a little bit more consistent, even with people that aren't on the top of the card. Because credit to Impact and credit to AEW, if you're on the bottom of the card, the good thing is you still look serious. You're not the laughing stock. So it's one of those things. I love the concept of the 24/7 championship. I love the concept of comedy and wrestling. Good comedy and bad comedy, by the way. It doesn't even have to be good comedy. But I do want to make it very, very clear that I was watching Raw tonight and I saw the women's tag team and I saw the 24/7 championship stuff, and I don't mess with it. I don't care about it. I don't care about it. And actually, I kind of got to the point, too, as I was watching tonight, I really don't give a shit about what's happening with Bianca Belair and Becky Lynch. I don't care about it because I think, and this is just me telling you how I feel about this from a wrestling fan's perspective, I think there needs to be some sort of change. There needs to be some sort of change, and I think WWE has to think quickly on that. I'm taking a look at the chat. A lot of people don't believe that Cody Rhodes is there. I mean, that's kind of crazy. Mr. Buck, yo, Ango, huge fan. Keep up the great content, brother. Thank you. Todd Crow says, great content, Ango. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much, Todd. Appreciate that. Albert Pond said it best. NXT has better women tag teams, though. You got that's their focus, right? NXT, everybody has a focus. Everybody has a vision. Everybody has an identity. Everybody has a plan. There's some sort of plans involved. You look at WWE Raw, that's not necessarily the case. So as much as I give them props on how they've presented people, they've also have some people that haven't been presented well at all. They haven't. And that's just the truth. I mean, unfortunately, that is just the truth. Hopefully that does get better over time. I feel like we're headed that way. But WWE wants you to know right now that Raw is all about Seth Rollins. It's all about Cody. There's a couple other things, too, I didn't like. We got another super chat from Zachary for $1.99. Reggie could be a good manager for a tag team. Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, Reggie can wrestle too, but wrestling in suits and like business attire, professional attire, I don't like that. I don't think it works in wrestling. I would like to see him presented differently, because I think he's incredibly awesome in the ring. Reggie has made everything that WWE gives him. They give him some bullshit stuff and they made it work. So I give him a lot of props for that. I think he's obviously talented. I'm not saying Reggie's going to be a U.S. champion. I'm not saying he's going to be a world champion. I'm not even saying he's going to be a tag team champion. He could very well be a good manager, but I think he could still fit on the roster as a wrestler. I do. Maybe it's just different attire. I don't know. There's something about Reggie that's not clicking for me, which is crazy because he's so freaking talented. And a lot of people don't know this, but Reggie didn't have an NXT run. He was like in the Performance Center and stuff, but he didn't have an NXT run. So I think that was kind of the issue with Reggie, is not having that TV experience. They put him with like the Nia Jax and the, that storyline, and then it just progressively became this thing where like now he's just a horny dude, like trying to make love with what's her name? Dana Brooke. Then he's trying to take the 24/7 championship again. It's like, I get why WWE does it. It's just not for me, personally speaking. So that's why I mentioned that completely. And that is something that you guys got to kind of keep in mind, too. It's like, it may not be for you. WWE might have some stuff on their show that is definitely not designed for you. And that's kind of where I feel with, like, Reggie, Tamina, Akira Tozawa. I see all of that stuff happening. Dana Brooke, and it's like, all right, cool. You just got the same 4 or 5 people chasing the 24/7 championship belt. Why not have this belt actually defended in matches, backstage brawl matches? Use the backstage environment, but not in the way that you've been doing it. Set up like gimmick matches with the 24/7 championship belt. And WWE in the beginning of the 24/7 championship belt, like Peter Rosenberg won the belt. He was doing a TV show live, and then he got pinned by R-Truth, right? Like, do things like that. That's what made the 24/7 championship cool, in my opinion. Now it's like, oh, okay, I just see this person backstage. I'm going to try to roll them up, So just kind of keep that in mind. Again, thank you, Zachary, for your super chat. Again, $1.99 super chat. I appreciate you. If anybody else wants to send a super chat, go ahead and get those in. We're coming up with about 15 minutes left on the show. So definitely consider that if you'd like. Russ says, good evening, Ango and followers. Welcome, Russ. I appreciate you. Let's see what's happening in the chat. Jonathan McMillan, welcome to the stream. Thank you for stopping by. Yeah, I mean, overall, though, I really enjoyed Raw. I really did, honestly. It's kind of funny, too, that I'm actually enjoying Raw. Just because, like I said, they've always had possibility of having a good show. But, like, now it's actually, like, the potential is actually starting to show a lot more often, which is cool. It looks like we got another super chat from James Mead, for $1.99. There's no message attached to that. James, thank you for your super chat, by the way. I do appreciate that. Cedric Gilmer says Omos versus who? That's another thing that we got to talk about. I like Omos a lot. I don't know what the hell they're doing with Omos, though. Taking on a 2-on-1 handicap match against Apollo Crews, having that match against Apollo Crews and Aziz, it just doesn't make sense. There's rumors that Omos will versus Bobby Lashley at WrestleMania. I mean, I feel like this is all kind of last minute, but we'll kind of see how that goes. That should be very interesting. We got another super chat from Ty Shades. I hope this whole Cody thing in WWE is a long game. Think of it as a story like Omega and Ibushi. Yeah. It crossed 2 or 3 promotions. It was a great story. Ty, thank you for your $5 super chat, first of all. I do appreciate your super chat. Look, when it comes to Cody in the long run, and I want to be very firm on this too. When it comes to Cody in the long run of WWE, you know, WWE is obviously building anticipation for his debut. And again, I keep saying this over and over. WWE, it's like the worst kept secret. They're acknowledging that Cody is coming. They're making it very clear that Cody is coming, but they're not going to outright tell you that Cody is coming. So when you have Seth Rollins act like this lunatic, when you see Seth Rollins lose his mind, the biggest egomaniac on the WWE roster for the last 2 years, can't get a match at WrestleMania. Now, he's not going to have any time to prepare. He's going to be losing his mind. Cody Rhodes can go out there for 10, 15 minutes, beat Seth Rollins, maybe even 20, 30 minutes if they want. After that happens, what happens with Cody Rhodes? What's next for Cody Rhodes? And I do agree, Ty. Yes, I think this whole Cody thing has to be a long game. And I think that is why, to answer this, right, I think it's really important that people understand that my concept of WWE having Cody Rhodes win the U.S. Championship, defending it every week, is very impactful. I believe Cody Rhodes should debut at WrestleMania. After that, move on from Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins can move on, do whatever the hell he wants. WWE needs to set up Cody Rhodes, win the U.S. Championship, have him defend the belt weekly on television. It gets the belt popular. It gets people talking about the belt. It becomes prestigious again. It's defended every single week. The world champion could show up on Monday Night Raw and SmackDown. Maybe you're not going to have the world champion on Raw. Cody Rhodes is a big enough name. If WWE is treating him with the utmost importance because he's a former EVP of AEW and you have this guy as the U.S. champion defending week in and week out, then the Cody Rhodes thing is perfect. The long game is clearly building Cody Rhodes back up. Because the thing is, if you think about it, what if Cody Rhodes jumps into WWE and immediately gets a Universal Championship match or a Unified Championship match? It doesn't make sense for Cody Rhodes to do that. That's why I have been saying that WWE's way of building up this feud without even announcing it is amazing. Seth Rollins shows up every single week causing havoc, freaking out, losing his mind because he cannot get a match or a moment at WrestleMania. What lengths will Seth Rollins go to get this match? Okay, great. He hijacks the show. What ends up happening? Seth Rollins shows up at WrestleMania, waiting for an opponent. The opponent never comes. Oh my God, the music hits. It's Cody Rhodes. It's excellent ideas in my head. It really, really is. It really is an excellent idea. And I think WWE's in a situation where I think they realize how they use Cody Rhodes on television will determine if they can bring anybody else in. And that is really, really important for the company. And I think WWE's in a situation where they notice this. And I think, again, you don't have to give him the world championship, but he could defend the U.S. championship belt every single week. It gets people talking. It gets people excited. Then he's building himself up. Okay, now Cody Rhodes has been booked very strongly. You put him in a championship match for the world title. He can win it. It's a huge payoff, in my opinion. We did get another super chat. Thank you again, Ty Shades. Thank you for your super chat again. I do appreciate that. Albert Ponce says he sent in a super chat as well. Again, $2 super chat. Street Profits and Bianca should turn heel. Yeah. Dude, let me see if I could pull up this tweet, actually. Let's see. Give me 1 second. So I'll throw the image on the screen, but basically Corey Woods from Woodward Sports Network. So yeah, Corey Woods from Woodward Sports Network actually posted this tweet, and it just had me thinking. He posted this picture of Street Profits with MVP, and he tweeted, "I think this is on the way." And honestly, as soon as I seen this tweet, it wasn't even something I had thought about before, but then I looked at this tweet and I realized if WWE wants to really turn Street Profits into a heel tag team, we already know they have the mic skills. We know these guys could deliver promos. They have been doing it week in and week out ever since they were on NXT. These guys have the ability to connect with the crowd. It's like Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman. Roman Reigns doesn't need a guy to cut his promos, but adding that mouthpiece, adding that guy by his side, like Paul Heyman immediately presented Roman Reigns. When he says he's the tribal chief, you genuinely believe it. And I think MVP is that type of guy for Street Profits. I genuinely believe, and Albert, thank you again for your super chat, Street Profits and Bianca should turn heel. You could even put them together, but you got to have them led by MVP. MVP, his presence alone would make them feel legit. These guys are coming out partying and drinking with their red cups. They're dancing around. Imagine you have MVP. Imagine you have MVP by your side. Again, these guys can talk. MVP's there strictly to handle business for them. It immediately makes people excited about this heel turn. And honestly, I think the ability for them to come together, whether you include Bianca or not, I think you'll have people talking. You throw a heel Bianca Belair in the mix, man, I think that right there would like immediately make me tuned in. Because you know why? I didn't expect it. If it wasn't for Corey's tweet, I probably would have never thought of it, to be honest. We saw what happened with the Hurt Business. It was cool. But these guys got personality. These guys can really make it work. I think this would be an incredible idea. Albert, thank you again for your $2 super chat. I genuinely do appreciate it. We did get another super chat from James. James says, for $4.99, he says, when do you think they should bring Mandy Rose back to the main roster? James, thank you for your super chat, by the way. So I actually talked about this last week. So WWE's in an interesting situation. Mandy Rose and Toxic Attraction are a really big part of NXT. It's one of the more popular segments. People love it. People are talking about it. Definitely people are talking about Mandy Rose. And I think WWE's in a situation that's kind of tough because if they bring Mandy Rose to the main roster right away, it depends. Like, do you bring Gigi Dolan? Do you bring JC Jane? Like, do you bring them together? Do you bring Toxic Attraction as a whole to the main roster? So I did talk about this at my last live stream during NXT last week. I think WWE needs to keep them a little bit longer on NXT, and then I think they should bring them maybe around SummerSlam time. If I'm WWE, I would bring them around SummerSlam time. I think that would be a massive win for WWE. Mandy Rose needs to go, again, right? We talk about good booking. The same type of emphasis that is on like Austin Theory being the future. You got to have that same emphasis on Mandy Rose. She could be a big solo act as a woman and on WWE SmackDown or Raw as a female. Or you can put her in a situation where she's got Toxic Attraction and she can continue elevating them on the main roster as well. The problem is the main roster's women's tag team championship belts are worthless compared to NXT. Again, thank you, James, for your super chat. I do appreciate that. We did get another super chat. So this super chat came from Ty Shades again. The U.S. Championship is a Rhodes family tradition. Dusty won it NWA. Dusty won it in WCW. Okay, hold on. Let me redo this. Let me reread this. I couldn't read this for a second. So Ty Shades sent in a super chat for $10, and he says, the U.S. Championship is a Rhodes family tradition. Dusty won it in NWA. Dustin won it in WCW. Cody would definitely build it up. So I'm going to explain this again for everybody to truly understand my idea here. This is my logic. Seth Rollins, for the last 2.5 years, has been building up this Monday Night Messiah, cringy, prick attitude, BS, bullshit. He's cringy, he's dancing, he's annoying, he's got the biggest ego. You put him on TV every week because he wants a WrestleMania moment. So what do? You have Cody Rhodes debut at WrestleMania. He defeats Seth Rollins. It's logical, right? Because Seth Rollins wasn't prepared at all. He wasn't prepared. He didn't expect it. He just wanted his moment. Now he got it. He can blame everybody. He can blame himself. But there's logic applied to him losing because of the character and the storytelling that they've been developing for Seth Rollins for the last 2 years. This guy who has been so cocky and everything about him, now nothing's going his way. It's a detriment to himself. Maybe it even teases Seth Rollins going as a babyface at some point in the near future. Maybe Cody Rhodes is the change for that. The Monday Night Raw right after that, Cody Rhodes can open up Raw with a beautiful promo. And I think that right there begins his babyface run. Now, we don't know the WrestleMania plans for Finn Balor. Maybe it's Damian Priest again. We don't know. But I think whatever ends up happening, Cody Rhodes has to get a hand on that U.S. Championship belt. If he gets the U.S. Championship belt, Cody Rhodes needs to defend it on a weekly basis. If Cody Rhodes defends it on a weekly basis while there is only one world champion, this belt is immediately elevated. No bullshit. He needs to defend it every single week. If he's defending it every single week, more and more people are going to tune into Raw. But also, more importantly, the belt is being defended on a weekly basis. Cody Rhodes wins all of these matches. Now you start building some meaningful feuds. Okay, now the time comes. Maybe it's SummerSlam. Maybe it's Extreme Rules. Maybe it's this. Whatever it is, I don't know. Whatever they end up doing with the World Championship at some point after Cody Rhodes has been so successful defending the U.S. Championship belt, now you have Cody Rhodes go for the World Championship. By the way, Cody Rhodes hasn't won the World Championship in AEW, and he hasn't won it in WWE. Okay, how do you book Cody Rhodes winning the World Championship? Well, at this point, if you're Cody Rhodes and you're constantly defending this U.S. Championship belt, you're giving it prestige, you're building it up. This mid-card is now finally being a big focus point, right? Which I think this is a good idea. You can have Cody become a world champion in two ways. You can have Cody Rhodes become a world champion by winning Money in the Bank, or you can have Cody Rhodes in a situation where he flat out, like Impact Wrestling style, cash in the U.S. Championship for the World Championship opportunity. This way, Cody Rhodes never even drops the U.S. Championship belt. He can vacate the belt in agreement with WWE officials for him to be granted a World Championship opportunity. Because imagine if Cody Rhodes doesn't lose the belt, he's hitting God tier in WWE. Now, the problem is, okay, is it Roman Reigns holding the belt? Is it Brock Lesnar? Is it this person, that person? I don't really know. But I do believe Cody building up the U.S. Championship belt would make the most sense. It's more impactful, and that's why it starts with Seth Rollins. None of this works without Seth Rollins. You could build Cody and Seth in 2 weeks. It means nothing. It means garbage. It literally does not mean anything of any sort of importance. Seth Rollins, who has this character, an egotistical maniac for weeks, raging, throwing things around, going crazy, all for a match. Oh, by the way, it's former EVP of AEW. It's Cody Rhodes. It's a one-and-done situation. You don't need a crazy complicated build. Oh, okay. Now, by the way, later on, you have a reason for Seth and Cody to go back into an actual meaningful feud. Long-term storytelling. You can call back to history. So I do agree. I definitely do agree. Ty, thank you again for your $10 super chat. Hopefully, I explained it in a way that makes sense. What do you guys think about that? Do you think this makes sense? Oh, by the way, the answer, do I have a newsletter? I do have a newsletter. You know, here's the thing, Ty. I have a newsletter. I don't really use it. I don't really push it. Maybe I should. Maybe that's something I'll look at this week to get going. But I upload every day, 2 videos a day at the very minimum. If there's ever a time where there is like breaking news or something, I might even give you guys more videos. But my big focus on this channel is to go live every day, every night. Whether it's Raw, SmackDown, Rampage, Dynamite, Impact, NXT, you know, it is what it is. Dweem 2009 says, "Are you sure Vince will want an ex AEW star winning the World Championship?" Well, my friend Cody Rhodes was in WWE before AEW, so I don't think Vince McMahon really gives a shit, to be honest. If you guys want to get in any last-minute super chats, we will be going off the air momentarily. Literally every single time I do these live streams, I get like 5 or 6 super chats at the end, which is totally cool. But send those in because I don't want you guys to like send them in now, so that way I don't have to wait to the point where like I don't get to actually read your super chat. I always feel bad if I can't read your super chats. So if you guys are sending in super chats, get them in now. I don't want you guys to send them in after I've already gone off the air because I don't think that's fair to you. But yeah, overall, guys, you know, I think WWE has gotten to a point where Raw has actually been really good recently. And I think it's all about storytelling. It's the basic stuff. They don't need to impress you with 10, 30-minute matches on a card. Raw is 3 hours. It's a long show. There's a couple ways for WWE to improve their show, but I want to use a couple examples. We've seen the priority that they've taken in the storytelling and the directions that they've taken with Kevin Owens, Seth Rollins, Edge. We don't know with Cody Rhodes what's happening, but there is a sense of direction for a lot of people on the roster. RK Bro, Street Profits, Austin Theory, right? Again, you got to start paying attention to some of the people that aren't being used. Veer is set to debut on April 4th. Okay, that's cool. But what's your vision? What's your plan? So for WWE to really improve, one, they need to start giving everybody a vision, everybody an identity, and everybody needs to have some sort of plan. If they're showing up on a weekly basis, you need to have some sort of direction for them. Don't just throw them all in one big tag team match and that's it. But definitely Raw has improved. SmackDown's been pretty good. That's one way to improve the show. Number two, another way for WWE to improve Raw. This is probably the least likely thing to expect, but I do think at some point WWE should probably think about going away from a 3-hour Raw. I know it's not likely. I feel like I'm just wasting breath, wasting air. I feel like it's not even really worth talking about, but I think a 3-hour Raw going down to 2 hours would be perfect. I feel like the reason why we're seeing so many storylines just kind of being thrown in is because WWE is trying to fill up the 3 hours. I don't think they have enough content for the 3 hours, so sometimes they force it. Another way for WWE to really improve their show, and I mean this wholeheartedly, invest in your youth. Invest in your youth. Look at what they're doing with Austin Theory. Win or lose at WrestleMania doesn't even really matter. Austin Theory is somebody who's been featured prominently. He got thrown off the frickin' Elimination Chamber pod from Brock Lesnar. He mixed it up with some of the biggest names in WWE. Now he's in a singles feud with Pat McAfee. Invest in your youth. I'm not saying everybody has to be a world champion. I will not go on record and say every person needs to be a world champion. I don't care if you were a top star in another company or not. Not everybody has to be a world champion. But what you need to do is feature them, use them, and apply the logic. The same logic that you are using for Seth Rollins and Cody, the same logic that's been applied for Kevin Owens and Stone Cold, the same logic that is being applied to RK Bro and Alpha Academy, apply that to your youth. People will get behind your low card and your mid card if you have something in store for them. You got to have like an elevation system where you're just like an elevator ride where you're just constantly moving them up. And the final thing for WWE to really improve their product, I give them their props for being a PG product. They are pretty, you'll hear the swear words, you'll hear some stuff. Hearing Seth Rollins rage was really cool, but I think if you can get WWE Raw to TV 14, I think it is a difference for WWE. And I think USA Network would be supportive of it. But I think you're looking at this grittiness that's attached to the product. If you could just elevate it a little bit more, just slightly, I think it'll be a little bit more improved. And I think that is something that should be taken seriously if you're WWE. Ty says, I enjoy your show. Dude, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. Thank you. Justin Richardson says, what's your prediction for Braun Breaker on the main roster? I'm glad you said this. Let's talk about it. So the question being asked is from Justin Richardson here on the Ango show, and he says, what is your prediction for Braun Breaker on the main roster? I can honestly say this confidently. Braun Breaker exudes everything that WWE wants from a top star. The look, the presentation. Like, this guy, nothing comes out of his mouth in a promo that feels forced. Now, by the way, he's not the most articulated promo. He's not the most incredible in-ring wrestler. But in WWE specifically, I look at something called the total package. The look, the presentation, your charisma, your athleticism. Braun Breaker has it all. And it scares me. But I do think my prediction for Braun Breaker is that he is going to be a future star in WWE. I really do genuinely believe Braun Breaker is going to be a world champion. But if I'm WWE, I do not make that decision just yet. I have Braun Breaker stay in NXT. Hold it down for a little bit longer. You don't have to rush. If it's true, if Cody Rhodes is there, if you got Seth Rollins, you got Brock and Roman and all of these world champion opportunities, potential opportunities for all these different guys, don't put Braun Breaker on Raw or SmackDown until you're ready to have this guy immediately inserted in a big feud. Now, I talked about it with Cody Rhodes. Hey, he should come in, win the U.S. Championship belt, defend it on a week-to-week basis. Imagine what kind of win that would be for Braun Breaker, right? Imagine you have one world champion. The U.S. Championship is being defended every week by Cody Rhodes. Imagine Braun Breaker debuts on an open challenge and actually defeats Cody Rhodes. That would be one way to actually have Cody Rhodes drop the belt and go on to compete for the world title. Braun Breaker has the opportunity now to hold it down as the U.S. Championship belt, because by that point, if you guys didn't hear what I said, I'll put a link in the description. But basically, if you have Cody Rhodes coming to WWE winning the U.S. Championship belt, and you're constantly defending it on a week-to-week basis, you've already built up the belt. So when Braun Breaker actually wins it, it's going to feel just as important as the World Championship. So yeah, my prediction is that WWE has a very good opportunity with Braun Breaker. I do get scared a little bit to see how they're going to handle him, but I do think they will do a great job. I really think Braun Breaker is just one of those guys who's there. This guy doesn't have the best promo. He doesn't have the best wrestling, but he has the overall look, the overall presentation, the overall charisma. Nothing feels forced. I don't feel like when I hear Braun Breaker cutting a promo, I don't feel like he's giving me some badass script that he's just reading off of. He just kind of goes off. He's kind of crazy. He's kind of like a lunatic in the ring and impactful and heavy hitting. I think Braun Breaker has it. I really do. I genuinely believe that. And I don't think WWE is going to get it wrong with Braun Breaker, because here's the thing. Braun Breaker went into NXT as Braun Breaker. WWE had already packaged Braun Breaker in a way that they, for example, we can compare Karrion Kross. I like this idea. Let's compare Karrion Kross. Karrion Kross went to NXT. All he was a good wrestler. Yeah, he had a good entrance song and theme and entrance and all of that stuff, but he didn't really have an identity. He goes to the main roster, and WWE wants to give you an identity. WWE wants to give you something to put the WWE touch on it. So what did they do for Karrion Kross? They gave him a stupid little mask. They changed everything about him. Now, the thing is, Braun Breaker is part of NXT 2.0. He's part of this new direction for WWE. So the reason why I do have a little bit more optimism here is because I think WWE has already packaged him the way that they want him to be. If we see any changes from Braun Breaker on the main roster, I think it's going to be very, very little. I don't think it would be as aggressive as maybe Karrion Kross. But I do have very high hopes for Braun Breaker. I think Braun Breaker is the next big pro wrestling star. Doesn't matter if it's AEW or WWE. Doesn't matter if it's Impact or New Japan. I think Braun Breaker is that guy. I really do. And the biggest issue with that is once you become the guy, it is very clear how the WWE universe will react. We saw it with Brock Lesnar. Not Brock Lesnar. We saw it with Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns, right? Roman Reigns was being fed 7 WrestleManias, 8 WrestleManias, whatever it was. Roman Reigns constantly in the spotlight. People just didn't like it. It was like being forced down their throat. It scares me that WWE might do that with Braun Breaker, but I do actually believe if they were to do that with Braun Breaker, I think people might be a little bit more receptive. I don't know. You don't have to build him up as a babyface. You could build him up as a heel. There's a lot of stuff you could do with Braun Breaker, but I think he actually is a star, and I do look forward to it. I really do genuinely look forward to it. We'll find out. Matt Make says, I feel like if they use Cody correctly, maybe, and Ambrose return. Hey, you never know. If WWE uses Cody Rhodes the right way, you never know, man. Jon Moxley might find his way back there. The Hardys might find their way back there. Chris Jericho might find their way back there. You might see MJF on there. You might see Jade Cargill and Wardlow. There's a lot of opportunities there. For sure, for sure. But all right, guys. We are coming in over an hour, a little bit longer than I actually hoped to do, but we went through a lot. I do appreciate everybody who came around to the stream. Over 200 viewers, which was amazing. Guys, thank you. Ty, Albert, James, Zachary, everybody who left a super chat, thank you so much. I honestly do greatly appreciate that. We'll be back tomorrow for NXT. Should be a really fun episode. As always, I'll keep you guys updated. WWE is building Stand and Deliver. I'm really excited about it. I'm very amplified about that. So as always, just make sure you guys stay tuned. We'll also have some news videos for you guys tomorrow. And then, as always, if you guys have any questions, my Discord server and all those links are in the description down below as well. Again, thank you guys for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.